Hello, welcome to Wireframing. I'll be your host, Cal Coverly, and by the end of this lesson, so let's write this down because I want you to write this down also. I hope that you will be able to explain the benefits of wireframing. Might also learn a couple tips and tricks along the way. So I want you to write down this objective somewhere that you can see it. I'll give you a sec. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what wireframing is. Wireframing, like, first big distinction that we need to make is it's not mocking up. Mocking up is you make a picture that looks like the thing that you're trying to make. That's not at all what wireframing is. So, like if, for example, if I look at Firebase site, there's one of the mod 4 ones where we're doing these Google search results. Cool. So you wouldn't have to build this out, and this wouldn't have to exist for you to make it. You pull up Illustrator or Sketch or something like that, and you drag and drop all the boxes and make it look like this. And then maybe you hand that to a development team. And you go, cool, make it look like this. That's a mock-up. Wireframe is way far removed from that. Wireframes look like this. That's like a pretty decent one right here. So what do you see as the major differences between the mock-up and the wireframe? Pick yourself. I want you to write them down and Slack them to me. I'll give you 2 minutes. Major differences you notice between this here wireframe and a mock-up or something higher fidelity than this. So. All right, pencils down, Slack me what you got. Oh, great detail, Lydia. Oh, wait. Okay, cool. So these are the distinct things that I saw people identify about this. So structural, mostly about like layout, like the placement of things. The outline, there's no color, there's no images, there's no theme, there's no content, there's no details, there's no real like line weights. We use placeholder text. So like some of you picked up on, like this is called Lorem Ipsum. It's just something that kind of looks like text visually, but it isn't the actual content. Something that I kept seeing in these though, so say it doesn't have any design to it, and that I'll bone pick with a little bit. So design is like a structure for a solution. We have this problem, then we design the solution to it. Wireframe is absolutely a design. It is the outline for a potential solution. So what it lacks are these things: color, images, theme. But those aren't necessarily the design. In fact, you could more say that like the wireframe is the design. These things are the decoration for it. Not quite the same thing. But I like that. So these are the big differences. Why? Who gives a shit? Why do we want to see what something looks like without color, images, theme, content, details, line weights?
Speed.
Yep. So we can absolutely do something like this faster. Those like polished mock-ups, they take forever to make. I don't make them. I don't believe in them, honestly. I think it's just as easy at that point to make the thing with CSS than it is to do it in Illustrator. Like, and the people who don't think that suck at CSS. So just suck less at CSS, and now, cool, you don't have to make high fidelity mockups anymore. Other reasons why we might wireframe.
More easily see like what the separate components are.
Yeah. Visualize components. That's a huge one. Because if we're just trying to make sure this is the right solution to our problem, this also starts like dovetailing really nicely into how we might implement this design. We go, now with all the like decoration elements, I can really see where the boxes are. They're going to be like the components that break this thing down into. Very true. What else?
Space is prioritized versus like adding it to like fill it in afterwards. If you like plan it out first and everything's going to be already like more open.
Yes. The layout, like the positioning of different things, that is your strongest design element for visual design. Physical placement of things. Way more so than color, way more so than typography. That was another thing that I don't know if anybody explicitly picked up on this. Like whatever typography is going to eventually be on the site, that's generally not part of your wireframe. You can just pick whatever. But since the most important part of this is our physical placement of stuff, it allows us to look at that in isolation. Very good. Other benefits to wireframing.
I think it helps you think about the functionality of what you're trying to do before you are worried about the design, like the color and whatever.
Yeah, the rest is superficial.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know.
Totally. Any other benefits? There's still a word that I'm looking for that I haven't heard yet. It starts with an H.
Hierarchy.
That's the one. Of all of these benefits, getting a handle on your hierarchy, I think, is probably one of the biggest ones. So let's talk about hierarchy a little bit. I used to teach this lesson on a thing called content inventories. I still want to talk about it a little bit, but this ended up being confusing because content inventories come from a super specific designer, and I don't know that it penetrated that much through the industry. The designer's name is Stephen Hay. He wrote a book called Responsive Design Workflow that was massively influential on me. And he talks about a thing called content inventories. So content inventory is everything that shows up on a particular screen or view, just a list of them. And so like a content inventory might look something like, all right, stuff that I know needs to be on this page, like title of the company, title of the page. Let's say there's a blog post or something. It might have author's name. It might have the date and time. It might have like some kind of hero image. It might have the actual content. Also, it's a blog, so we're really like an advertising sales platform that lures people in with blogs. So we have 2 small ads and 1 large ad. We have like legal notice. We have links to home. Link to home. Might have a link to next article, link to a store, link to privacy policy. Cool. So like, this is the idea. You think of everything that's going to be on this screen and you just write it as a list like this. This is making a content inventory. Then you go, okay, so these are all the things that need to be on there. How would I prioritize them? And so you go, all right, the stuff that really matters that I want to give a lot of visual weight to. You know, the company, that's probably important. The large ad, that might be up there also. That's the thing that's making money for this page. So pretty damn important. Title of the page, it's probably important. Author's name maybe doesn't matter quite as much for this. But it's a news site, so the date and time, that does matter. The actual content, probably more important than, I'll probably put that about there. Yes, yes, and then yeah, maybe all of this stuff is kind of tertiary. All right, so now I've prioritized this content inventory. Wireframing is a very feasible next step. So you go, okay, now how do I reflect this priority list visually? So we have all of these different levers that we can pull with layout. So for example, positioning. Specifically, top left is heavy, lower right is light, and I'll also throw in here the F pattern. This one's like super culturally dependent, but in Western cultures, upper left, that has tons of visual weight to it. It's where your eye naturally goes first. And then this like F pattern, this is from eye tracking studies. when people look at pages, oh, this is this. So F tracking comes from Nielsen Norman Group. This is they're like, no, it's more subtle than that. And you can defeat the F tracking pattern. Anyway, it looks like this. This is from NNG. When people look at pages, the way they look through them tends to have this kind of pattern to it. Because people don't read sites. They don't read apps. They don't read code. Like, this is such a, like a counterintuitive idea. But people don't read this shit. They scan it. The reason you're looking for at something like this is you have a goal in mind. Like, for example, I went camping last weekend. I was really unhappy with our dishwashing situation. So it's like, how can we handle dishwashing more effectively? And so I'm reading blog posts. I'm looking through stuff, but I'm not really reading. I'm looking for a solution to my problem, and that's very different. And so your really critical stuff, you want to follow along that, that kind of F pattern. So that's like one of the things that we have to pull. What other ones can you think? These are all part of wireframing that we can use to reflect priorities.
Size.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll say that like big is heavy, small is light. What else?
Different colors.
Oops, so we don't want to do color, although that is the thing that we like affects layout. What I will say is that you can do value. Value is allowed in wireframes. So we'll call that dark is heavy, light is light. So even in the this wireframe we're looking at, some things are still darker than others, like this news feed. So in design terms, we refer to that as value. That's allowed, but I would stay away from color for right now, even though that is a thing that impacts priority, hierarchy. What else?
I'd imagine you'd want to give some kind of priority to things that are like essential functions of whatever you're making.
Well, so that's what the content inventory was about. Content inventory was saying like what matters in which order. So like the link to the privacy policy does not matter nearly as much as the name of the company. So we've done that work. Now we're trying to make sure that that's visually reflected in the layout.
I'm going to chime in again with the space. More space is more important.
Yep. So white space. More space is important. More space is heavy. Less space is light. So for example, if you look at something that has tons of white space, see if I can find an example. So in this one, all of the space around this makes this important. Absent anything else, this becomes important because of how much space you made around it. Another like classic example is like, this becomes important because of how many things aren't around it, how many things are clear and out of the way. So our use of that like can raise something up in priority. Other things we can do.
Just like put borders around things.
So like I would think of it less as a border, but and more of like a grouping. So grouping, things that are adjacent are similar. Things that are far away aren't. And like, it's very common in a wireframe to like actually indicate those with boxes. But if you've been to one of my how to make your app not look like shit lessons before, you know that, boy howdy, fastest way to drive me crazy is to put a whole bunch of boxes around stuff in layouts. So even in something like this, we're more showing that like this is a blog post or something, so all of these elements belong together. But as we start getting tools like color back, we have more effective ways than literally just drawing a box around them. What other tools do we have?
Iconography.
Yeah, absolutely. So iconography is really dense communication. So it's relying on your shared cultural understanding of what, for example, these things mean. Or these things. But imagine if you had to write all of those things out as words. That takes up a lot of space, and then we start running up against all of these other things. Really dense communication. Same thing with this. If you had to have a share word every single time, that becomes, that starts distracting from this content.
And I was also thinking like where it combines the icon with the word next to it provides a little more emphasis.
Exactly.
Like and comment.
Totally. Yeah, that becomes one of your like tools for emphasizing something. I'll give you another one. I want you to think to yourself for a second, how many things in this layout are centered? Think to yourself, which things in this layout are centered? All right, who's got a count for me?
Two,
I see two also. What are your two?
John and home.
John? Where's John? Oh, up here?
Top right. I'm thinking within their element, they look centered.
So you might be right. I don't think so. I think that they're like, if I were implementing this with CSS, I'd probably have a box here, and these would either be space around or space between.
Yeah, that makes sense.
My two were post inside of this button and the browser title. Other than that, I don't see any other centered things on this page. One of the reasons I want to call that out is that this is another one of the most common things people do to fuck their designs, is just center the shit out of everything. Because alignment matters. Centered is heavy. Left is light. I'd say right is, I'd say it's also like a little heavy. So to go back to like some of this stuff. So something like this design that has a lot of centering on it, it's still just the text, and I still hate it. Like the joke in the design community is that centering is for wedding invitations. And like, to wit, that looks like a wedding invitation. It's also like a little bit the vibe they're going for. But it's just the typography. They still have this like offset thing here. Not centered, not centered, not centered, not centered. Even this kind of looks like it's centered, but it's really not. And you can tell by the sharp edge on this and the ragged edge over here. This is like, I think, a good example of decent centering. This is probably a space between kind of thing too, but this calls a ton of attention to the navigation, especially when you combine it with the white space here. No centering, no centering. These numbers like are arguably centered. Centering a title, that really, like, especially something that's also very large, if you also center it, that gives it like a real punch in the face kind of feeling. Cool. So to bring this back to our hierarchy here, if this is like our actual hierarchy and what we think is important, these are the visual levers that we can pull to make sure that our visual layout reflects like our intent with the hierarchy. And that is what visual design is all about. It's not art. It's not having a beret. It's not being good at drawing. It's solving this problem with these tools. Ask me some questions.
I think I'm a little unclear on whether heavy is good or light is good, or is it the balance between light and heavy that's good? I don't quite understand the interplay between all of those things.
Sure. So if our prioritized content inventory says the title of the company is more important than the link to the privacy policy, then we want it to have more weight than the link to the privacy policy does. Well, how do we give it more weight? We could put it in the top left. We could make it really big. We could make it really dark. We could put a ton of white space around it. We could group it with other things that are important. We could combine it with some iconography. We could center it. Those are all tools that we have to make this visually more important. And then part of the challenge is you go, cool, so I have this centered at the top of the page, and it's super dark value. All right, now it's heavy as fuck. Then I got to add this add in. I go, okay, well, these things all work together. So as I add in the next element, I go, okay, well, this is still really important. So how do I make sure that it's not equally as important as the title of the company? And so then as we add each of these things, we have to keep reconfiguring all of these little levers that we're pulling to make sure that visually this is more important than this, is more important than this, is more important than this, is more important than this. Does that answer your question, Lynn?
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you.
It's like if we look at one of these wireframes, certain things jump out to you. So for example, the search. that like, it's in the upper left. It has like quite a bit of space, has some iconography. All those things together like give this a ton of weight. So we like tend to notice that first. You also might notice this. It's also higher up, something that is like higher on the page, has more weight. It is grouped with a lot of things. It also like takes up quite a bit of the page proportionally, so its size is large. It has this iconography. All these things kind of draw your eye to it. It's the only thing that has a dark button, which like you'll refer to that as a CTA or a call to action. And so if there's an action you can take on this page, like that's one of the first things you go for. And so like those two things catch your eye first. If we were to reverse engineer this and make a content inventory, I'll bet like posting, the tool for posting something is probably damn near the top. Search also probably damn near the top. And then if we go to the things that like are maybe less important, based on the F tracking pattern, this ad over here, probably not so important. Some of these like trending links, not so important. Definitely this stuff up here, less weight. And also like that doesn't mean that like you don't want anyone to do it. If I'm looking for like my account settings, it would be bizarre as hell if that was like dead center. That's not where I'm looking for it. I'm looking for it somewhere a little bit less used.
When in your like process of developing a web app are you doing this? Like at the very beginning when you're thinking about all your components? I know I'm sure you update it throughout, but like.
Oh, I don't actually. This is like a early on in a new feature. So not necessarily at the beginning of the app, but for example, when I was making this page, like I absolutely sketched this out first. But it was like months later that we added this videos feature. And so then I made a wireframe for the videos feature and I made a content inventory. I was like, all right, well, I've got a list of videos and each of those videos has a title and it has tags and it has a link to go see the video. It has ways to add tags and remove tags. This thing here is called a fab or a floating action button. I was like, all right, I need a way for adding videos. I need links back to the main page. I need these links here. Like you guys don't see all of this stuff. This is the instructor view. I need a preview thing for the video. So like somewhere, it's probably in a notebook somewhere. There is a like pencil sketch of this as a wireframe. And then I use that as a starting place for my CSS layout. Because imagine this page with no color, with like just a lot less detail, like this drop shadow, like that's not in the wireframe. I feel like a lot of those details aren't there. If you had that in CSS, and then you had to add the drop shadows and the colors and stuff, like you wouldn't blink. That's not very difficult to do. Getting the layout right, that's difficult to do. So I'll go from what needs to be on this page. So I'll make a content inventory. Then I'll prioritize it. Then I'll do the wireframe. Then I'll try to CSSify my wireframe. And then I bring in color, images, theme, content, details, different line weights, typography, that kind of stuff. But it's not for the app, it's for the feature. It's for, wait for it, a thin vertical slice. Great question. What else?
Any tool recommendations for making such a thing?
Sure. Honestly, don't overthink it. My go-to tools are pen and paper, like asterisks. I'll show you what I mean by that, because that sounds a little bit misleading. So this is my design kit. So like I have some drafting pencils that I like to use for this kind of stuff. I also really like these Bic mechanical pencils in a pinch, but like a $30 drafting pencil is way more nice to do wireframes with. The weighting on the pencil is just a lot more steady, and so your lines come out straighter and cleaner. Other things I have in here. I have wireframing stencils. So these are just like different things that might show up on a wireframe. This one's for like forms and stuff. And so it allows you to like rapid prototype in a lot of the same way that you would with like a tool like Adobe Sketch, or not Adobe Sketch. Does Adobe make Sketch? No, they don't. Whoever fucking makes Sketch.
I was thinking Illustrator first,
Yeah.
but I even that felt extra, but now that doesn't feel extra.
Yeah. Gosh, another drafting pencil. I use them all for different things. And then let's see what else. Then I also have these like shading pencils. They're just for value. And other things in the kit are like, so here's a good example of a wireframe. I have this little, it's a sketch pad with like little mobile layouts and stuff on it. Or there's another wireframe. So it just gives me an idea of like what that layout might look like. And then there's one more tool, it's right over here. It's let's see if I can get this on there. It's a pixel ruler. And so it has markings for like a lot of different common screen sizes and stuff. And also like sometimes I'll literally just hold it up to the screen and just like see about what something is. So all those together, that's my favorite wireframing tools. The other stuff that I have used successfully before, Lucidchart is very good. And let's see. Lucidchart is also really good for ERDs, by the way. But yeah, that's a Lucidchart wireframe.
That is more what I was picturing.
Another one that I use a lot at Pearson, it's still pretty popular, is called Balsamic with a Q. So like Balsamic like has this, it's like super identifiable. Since like you're not worrying about typography or a lot of other things like this, every Balsamic wireframe kind of looks like this. Oh, and that's a good example of like how you do images. So we're not doing images, but we still worry about the placement of images, and you usually do it with a box with an X on it. Things like this, like these scribbles, these are actually really good for indicating that it saves the same sort of function as Lorem Ipsum does, giving you an idea of like there will be, and then more text like this here. Yeah, those are the two that I have experience with. What else?
What's your advice for like the amount of detail to put in or leave out? I always have trouble either like finding the right balance between like sketching it out like in 5 minutes versus like drawing out like every detail and like making it way too perfect.
That's a great question. So I left out one step that I'll also do quite a bit. And let's see if I can find some visual examples of it. My sketchbook. Oh shit! I just ripped everything out of there the other day. I left out a thing called thumbnail sketching, which I also sometimes will do right after I do a content inventory. Yeah, they look like this. So thumbnail sketches are, you're not supposed to spend more than like 10 seconds on them. And you do it like this. You make a whole bunch of boxes on a page, and then you set a timer, and then you just try to like get as many of them done. You spend 10 seconds, come up with an idea, whatever, this one's fucking stupid, just go. And so you just try to do them over and over and over again. And you do them for like 10 minutes or so, as many as you can stand to get done. And so if I have these for websites, maybe. See if they have ones that'll give you things like this. This is exactly what they end up looking like. They're like super, super high level layout ideas. And so you want to get like 20, 30, 40 of these kinds of things. And then like you're going to start running out of ideas. So then you just try to get weird. All right, what if it's a circle? I don't know. You're really trying to use the clock to force you into just thinking as quickly as possible. So once you've done your thumbnail sketches, you look for like promising patterns or things that you think might help you best reflect your content inventory. And I'll spend probably in the neighborhood of like 15 minutes or so on a wireframe. And my heuristic is, do I know enough to start implementing this yet? So if I see something like that, not really. If I see something like that, that's way too much. Like this is a lot of energy I'm spending on this that I could have been spending actually just fucking building it. And so I'm really looking for something more like this. If I see something like this, that gives me enough to get started with. And then once I've started on it, there's an earlier question about like, oh, well, do you go back and update it? No, it's served its purpose. It's kind of like the relationship between HTML and the DOM. Once the HTML gets gobbled up and turned into the DOM, we don't need the HTML anymore. And I feel the same way with wireframes. So unless I need to change something and want to play with some different ideas, I don't do it. They're just tools to help you get to your implementation. Other questions? All right, let's see how I did. So I would like you to Slack me. What are the benefits of wireframing? Somebody goes, wireframing, huh? That's a waste of time. Like, why would you wireframe? Or you talk to somebody who's like, I never heard that word before. What is that? Why would I do that? Write me your explanation of what the benefits of wireframing are on Slack. 3 minutes, go. 10 seconds. All right, send me what you got. Then I found a treat for you guys. Cool. So I found them. I found the like my thumbnail sketches and stuff. And I also found like these aren't strictly wireframes, but if like you want to get better at design, this is how you do it. So this is Gmail. I just did this while I was watching Stranger Things or some shit like that. I used like my pixel ruler a lot, and I tried to make like make sure that all of the values and stuff were correct on things. And then I made notes on what they were, and then I used my colored pencils to like identify what I thought likely components were in this. And I've done that for a few different sites. This is a good example of thumbnail sketches. There was a particular data viz that didn't have a name, but I thought I could probably pull off with something like D3. And so these were like thumbnail sketches of what I thought that data viz could possibly be. And then like one of them started getting kind of promising. And so then I did like, I played around with that particular design a little bit more. These are more thumbnail sketches. And so then after I was done with this page, like I put X's on stuff that's like, nope, nothing like this. This is just not in the right direction. I put check marks on things that like I thought had some promise. And so it's not committing to like, I don't know, doing the best thing from your thumbnail sketches. It's just an idea generation thing. This was Code School's old layout that I thought was pretty good. And so then again, I tried to like outline what I thought all the logical components of the design were. This one was one of my wireframes. And I'd say that's a pretty representative wireframe. That site is real, by the way. This was another one. This was somebody else's website. I thought it was a pretty good mobile sign-up form that I wanted to sketch out. This one is Airbnb's tablet layout. That is a wireframe of. This one is my personal site, and like is sort of reflected in the design that exists right now. So like I started out with that, with this sort of gradient background. And I was like, well, I want me teaching or something in it, something kind of like that. And I had moved my name and the nav up to the corner, but I always sort of liked how it was there too. So I actually ended up combining those. And the real one now looks kind of like that. And then like I wanted a little bit of a text show off too. So I had a background video with this like moving overlay on top of it. Cool. What questions do you have? All your answers were great, by the way. Sold. Thank you very much.